The moment it became clear that the Narcotics Control Board, NARCOB, was part of the team that arrested Abu Trica, the entire narrative around his case changed. This was no longer just about internet fraud, flashy lifestyles, or romance scams. This was the moment the case entered a deeper, darker, and far more dangerous territory. In Ghana, NARCOB does not join arrests casually. They do not tag along for publicity. Their mandate is specific and serious. Drugs, narcotics, money connected to narcotics, networks that move substances, cash, or both across borders. So when NACOB shows up alongside EOCO, National Security, and the FBI, it means one thing. Authorities are looking beyond what is visible on social media and digging into what funded it. Let us be clear from the start. Abu Trica has not been convicted of cocaine trafficking. What exists are investigations, intelligence trails, and suspicions that authorities are now actively examining. Wicked Blogger Ghana does not pronounce guilt. We report reality. And the reality is that NACOP's involvement has triggered widespread allegations that Abu Trica's wealth may not have come solely from cyber fraud. That suspicion did not fall from the sky. Why NACOB entered the picture? In most high-level fraud cases involving massive cash flow, investigators always ask one critical question. Does the fraud alone explain the volume of money? If the answer is no, then law enforcement looks for a secondary source. Historically, that secondary source is often narcotics. Abu Trica's lifestyle raised red flags. Luxury vehicles, expensive mansions, cash spending with no visible restraint, no registered businesses that could reasonably justify such income, no long-standing corporate footprint, and yet the money kept flowing. That is where NACOB comes in. Investigators are reportedly examining whether some of the funds linked to Abu Trica may have originated from narcotics distribution, specifically cocaine, or whether fraud proceeds were mixed with drug money to confuse tracing efforts. This is not unusual in international crime. In fact, it is common. Cyber fraud and narcotics trafficking often intersect. Fraud provides the digital channels, drugs provide the bulk cash, money laundering ties them together. What NACOB is allegedly investigating, according to intelligence patterns seen in similar cases, NACOB's interest would likely focus on several key areas. First, whether Abu Trica had direct or indirect links to known narcotics distributors operating in Ghana or West Africa. Second, whether any of his associates are already on NACOB or international narcotics watch lists. Third, whether some of the assets seized or frozen were purchased using funds that cannot be explained by documented fraud proceeds alone. Fourth, whether Ghana was being used as a transit or laundering base connected to cocaine supply routes feeding Europe or North America. These investigations are quiet. They do not play out on social media. By the time the public hears anything official, the work is usually already done. Why this is extremely dangerous for Abu Trica. An FBI fraud case is already serious. But once narcotics allegations enter the equation, everything changes. Fraud charges can be negotiated. Sentences can be reduced. Cooperation can significantly help, but narcotics-linked charges, especially cocaine-related ones tied to international networks, come with mandatory minimums, harsher sentencing guidelines, and far less mercy. If prosecutors establish that Abu Trica knowingly benefited from cocaine proceeds, even without touching the drugs himself, he could face conspiracy charges. In US federal law, conspiracy carries almost the same weight as direct involvement. That is the danger. The FBI angle and how it connects. The FBI does not work in isolation. When they partner with NACOB, it is because the case has cross-border implications. The FBI is reportedly interested in whether any US-based drug proceeds were laundered through Ghana using networks that also ran romance scams. If that link is proven, Abu Trica's case escalates from fraud to organized transnational crime. At that level, prosecutors stop seeing individuals. They see networks. And when they see networks, they want names, possible outcomes, if narcotics links are established. If investigations confirm cocaine-related involvement, several outcomes become likely. Asset forfeiture would be total and irreversible. Not just cash, but cars, houses, jewelry, and any property linked to illicit funds. Extradition would almost certainly proceed without delay. Ghana would have little reason to shield anyone once narcotics charges are in play. Sentencing exposure would increase dramatically. What could have been decades could quietly become life-altering time behind bars. Associates would be pulled in. Anyone who moved money, held assets, or acted as a front could be questioned, charged, or flipped. The silence strategy will not work. If Abu Trica believes silence will protect him, he is mistaken. In cases like this, silence only benefits investigators. They already have timelines, transfers, and digital trails. What they want now is confirmation and context. The FBI and NACOB do not chase small fish at this level. If they are involved, it means they believe there is more beneath the surface. Final word. The presence of NACOB in Abu Trica's arrest is not accidental. It is not cosmetic. It signals that authorities are probing deeper than cyber fraud and asking questions that could redefine the entire case. Whether the cocaine allegations stick or not will depend on evidence, not street talk. But one thing is certain. Once narcotics authorities enter your file, your legal battle becomes longer, harder, and far more dangerous. As this case unfolds, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The involvement of NACOB has placed Abu Trica in a category far more dangerous than the typical fraud boy story Ghanaians are used to. This is no longer about laptops, fake profiles, or romance chats alone. This is about how money moves, where it comes from, and who truly controls it. Why authorities suspect a narcotics connection. In high-value crime investigations, law enforcement follows patterns, not rumors. Fraud alone rarely produces the kind of fast, liquid wealth Abu Trica displayed unless it operates at a massive industrial scale. Even then, most cyber fraud networks struggle with one problem: moving large sums quietly. This is where narcotics networks come in. Drug money already moves across borders. It already uses cash couriers, shell accounts, front businesses, and underground banking systems. When fraud proceeds mix with narcotics proceeds, tracing becomes difficult unless agencies coordinate. That coordination is exactly what we are seeing now. Investigators are reportedly looking at whether Abu Trica's operations intersected with individuals already under NACOB or international narcotics surveillance. This does not mean he personally sold cocaine. That is not how these networks work. Often, one person handles fraud, another handles drugs, and another handles laundering. Everyone benefits. Everyone is exposed. The money laundering angle: if NACOB establishes that any of Abu Trica's assets were purchased with mixed funds, meaning fraud money combined with suspected cocaine proceeds, then the entire asset base becomes toxic. Under international law, once funds are tainted, ownership no longer protects you. This explains why accounts were frozen so quickly. This explains why properties were sealed without prolonged public debate. Authorities were not just preserving evidence, they were preventing money from disappearing. Money laundering is the bridge crime. Once proven, it connects everything. Why this case is bigger than Ghana. This investigation is not limited to Ghanaian law. Cocaine routes involve South America, West Africa, Europe, and North America. If even a fraction of that trail touches Abu Trica's network, the FBI will treat him as part of a transnational criminal conspiracy, not a local fraud suspect. In US federal cases, conspiracy does not require you to touch drugs. It requires knowledge and benefit. If